This week's blog post is the 12th in my timeline from 1900 to 2021. It covers 2010 to 2021, so it is the final one in the series. I have enjoyed doing this, but I don't mind that it's over now. This series of 12 posts has been an illustrated decade-by-decade timeline for the years 1900 to 2021. For more on the timeline, you can see the first blog post in the series. This post is a teaser. It is not the full text for 2010 to 2021. Members of my free email list have been receiving PDFs of the text decade by decade. To join the free email list, drop an email to me on the Sunday recommendations page on my website. Among the events of this decade, in 2010, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, often known as Obamacare, is the most significant change in healthcare since 1965, when Medicare and Medicaid were created. Obamacare expands Medicaid eligibility, requires private insurance companies to accept all applicants without any charge for pre-existing conditions, and requires all individuals to buy insurance or else pay a fine. In 2011, Osama bin Laden is killed by U.S. forces in Pakistan. 2012, the U.S. ambassador to Libya and 3 other Americans in Benghazi are murdered by militant Islamists. The Obama administration, including Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, is accused of covering up security lapses. 2013 saw the rise of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, known as ISIS, a group of militant Islamists. By 2015, 2 years later, ISIS controls part of Iraq and Syria with outposts in Africa and Asia. In 2013, Edward Snowden leaks highly classified National Security Agency information regarding global surveillance programs by governments and telecommunications companies, fueling a debate about national security versus privacy. 2016, Great Britain votes to withdraw from the European Union. This is known as Brexit. In 2016, WikiLeaks, which was established by Julian Assange in 2006, releases many private emails, including some related to Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. Clinton's supporters say WikiLeaks was fed false information by Russia. In 2019, Trump rescinds the fine for those who are not buying Obamacare. Also in 2019, ISIS is defeated by a 74-member coalition that includes the U.S., France, Russia, and some Muslim states. In December 2019, the COVID-19 virus spreads worldwide from Wuhan, China. It is declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization in March 2020. Lockdowns lead to widespread supply chain disruptions, shortages, and the worst recession since the Great Depression. In April 2020, President Trump signs the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, known as the CARES Act, providing for billions in one-time cash payments to most Americans, increased unemployment benefits, forgivable small business loans, loans to corporations, and grants to state and local governments. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that this bill will increase federal deficits by about $1.7 trillion in 2020 to 2030. In May-June of 2020, Black Lives Matter, which was established in 2013 to protest police brutality and systemic racism, has its largest demonstrations ever following the death on May 25, 2020, in Minneapolis, of George Floyd while he was in police custody. BLM protests over the next month involve an estimated 15 to 26 million people nationwide, many of whom ignore government-instituted COVID-19 regulations such as social distancing and masks. Although some protests are peaceful, in New York, Chicago, Washington, Philadelphia, Minneapolis, Portland, Seattle, and elsewhere, rioters torch buildings, loot stores, and vandalize property, causing an estimated $2 billion in insured damages across the U.S. By November 2020, at least 25 people have died in the riots. Some blame the violence on infiltration of BLM by Antifa, a loose collection of left-wing anti-fascists, anti-racists, communists, socialists, anarchists that emerged after the 2016 election. In March 2021, President Biden signs the American Rescue Plan of 2021, part of his Build Back Better agenda. It includes longer unemployment benefits, more direct payments to individuals, emergency paid leave, tax increases on large corporations and wealthy individuals, grants to governments, and funding or subsidies for education, housing, agriculture, cybersecurity, healthcare, pension funds, and transportation. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that the bill will increase federal deficits by another $1.9 trillion in 2020 to 2030. And finally, jumping into 2022, which is not what the title of the book says, but in early 2022, Russia under Putin invades the Ukraine to, quote, demilitarize and denazify, end quote, it. In economics, the 2010s sees a steady increase in the value of Bitcoin, which was first issued in 2009, and other cryptocurrencies. In 2018, partly due to a shale oil boom, the U.S. becomes the world's largest crude oil producer for the first time since 1973, surpassing Russia and Saudi Arabia. In 2019, for the first time since 1957, the U.S. produces more energy than it consumes. In transportation, in 2008, the first Tesla electric cars go on sale. They become more common in the 2010s. And in 2020, SpaceX is the first private company to send humans into orbit. In medical matters, to pick one out of many items, in 2019, 11.3% of Americans, that's 37.3 million Americans, are diabetic, type 2 adult onset. That's up from 8.8% in 1988 to 94. Diabetes now ranks 8th in causes of death in the U.S. In genetics, in 2012, Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier published the gene editing tool CRISPR-Cas9. In books, among the top 10 bestsellers each year are books by several of these authors: John Grisham, Stephen King, Danielle Steele, Nicholas Sparks, Michael Crichton, James Patterson, Tom Clancy, Janet Ivanovich, and Dan Brown. In visual arts, we have the sculpture controversy. In 2015, following a shooting at a black church in Charleston, South Carolina, by a white supremacist, which left 9 people dead, national debate arises over the display of the Confederate flag and memorials to Confederate leaders. In 2020, following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Black Lives Matter protesters haul down or deface outdoor sculptures associated with the Confederacy, including the sculpture of Robert E. Lee in Richmond. Rioters also deface or pull down sculptures of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ulysses S. Grant, Theodore Roosevelt, Miguel de Cervantes, Mahatma Gandhi, Andrew Jackson, and others. I've given you a link to my essay on the sculpture controversy in the blog post. In architecture, Skidmore, Owings & Merrill's Burj Khalifa in Dubai was completed in 2010. It is currently the tallest building in the world at 163 stories and 2,717 feet. In film, of the 25 top-grossing films of the 2010s, 40% feature characters from Marvel: The Avengers, Spider-Man, Captain America, the Black Panther, Thor, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and the Black Widow. Avengers Endgame is the highest-grossing film to date, 2022. On TV, popular sitcoms include How I Met Your Mother, The Big Bang Theory, 30 Rock, Parks and Recreation, and Modern Family. Dramas include The Bates Motel, Downton Abbey, Game of Thrones, and Homeland. In music, the top-selling album artists, in descending order, are Adele, Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran, and Rihanna. Psy's Gangnam Style, which is a genre called K-pop for South Korean popular music, is released in 2012 and becomes the first YouTube video to reach 1 billion views. In musicals, we had Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, which means Marvel also hit Broadway, not just the films. Lin-Manuel Miranda's Hamilton, an American Musical, wins 11 Tony Awards and the Pulitzer Prize for Drama, and also sets box office records for ticket sales. And that's it. DianeDuranteWriter.com has hundreds of posts on sculpture, painting, architecture, and my other obsessions. To join the free Sunday Recommendations email list, visit the URL that's on the screen or email me. And you can say, "Well done, Diane," or support my work and receive rewards by means of the tip jar on DianeDuranteWriter.com. As always, thank you for listening.